The champagne flute slipped from Riley Green's hand at the worst possible moment, shattering into glittering shards across the polished marble floor. The exclusive penthouse event fell silent as 30 pairs of eyes turned toward her, including those of a tall, dark-haired man, whose intense gaze made her stomach flip despite her mortification. "I'm so sorry," she muttered, already dropping to her knees to collect the larger pieces. She'd been working as an event server for Elegance Catering for just 3 months, and this was the most prestigious gig she'd landed yet, a private celebration at one of Chicago's most exclusive addresses. "Leave it," came a gentle but authoritative voice. The dark-haired man had approached and was now crouching beside her. Up close, his eyes were a striking shade of blue-gray. "There's a broom behind the bar. Don't cut yourself." Riley nodded, grateful but embarrassed. "Thank you. I'll clean it up properly." "I don't believe we've met," he said, offering her a hand to help her up. "I'm Jack." "Riley," she replied, briefly taking his warm hand before stepping back professionally. "And I should really get back to work before I'm fired." His lips curved into a smile that transformed his serious face. "I doubt anyone's firing you tonight." Before she could respond, her manager Tina appeared with a dustpan and brush, her expression tight with barely contained irritation. "I'll handle this, Riley. Just serve the east side of the room for now." Riley nodded, avoiding the curious gazes as she retreated to the bar. The handsome stranger Jack was immediately surrounded by guests eager for his attention. She watched as he graciously engaged with each person, though his eyes occasionally drifted in her direction. "That's him, you know," whispered Carlos, the bartender, as he handed her a fresh tray of drinks. "Jack Sullivan." The name meant nothing to Riley. "Should I know who that is?" Carlos looked at her incredulously. "Seriously, Jack Sullivan, CEO of Innovate Technologies, the guest of honor tonight? This whole party is celebrating their new headquarters in Chicago." Riley felt her face flush. She'd just made a complete fool of herself in front of the CEO they were all there to celebrate. "Great, that's just perfect. Don't sweat it. From the way he was looking at you, I'd say he didn't mind," Carlos teased, nudging her toward the waiting guests. For the next hour, Riley focused intensely on her job. Determined not to make another mistake, she circulated with drinks and appetizers, smiling politely at the guests while trying to stay as far from Jack Sullivan as possible. Despite her efforts, she kept finding him in her peripheral vision, his tall figure easy to track as he moved through the crowd. When the dinner portion of the evening began, Riley was stationed behind the scenes, helping plate the gourmet courses. She was relieved to be away from the scrutiny of the guests, particularly one guest, but couldn't help wondering about the mysterious CEO who'd been kind to her despite her clumsiness. "Riley," Tina called, interrupting her thoughts. "Mr. Sullivan has requested that you personally serve his table." "What? Why?" Riley asked, her heart suddenly racing. Tina shrugged. "He didn't say, but he's the client, so—" She gestured toward the dining room with a look that clearly communicated, "Don't mess this up." Taking a deep breath, Riley balanced the tray of appetizers and made her way to the main table. Jack Sullivan sat at its center, engaged in conversation with a silver-haired man, but he looked up as she approached, his conversation trailing off mid-sentence. "Ah, Riley," he said, her name sounding different in his deep voice. "Thank you for taking care of our table." She placed the first plate before him. "Of course, Mr. Sullivan. It's my pleasure." "Jack, please," he corrected with that same transformative smile. Throughout the meal, Riley found herself returning to his table more often than was strictly necessary, drawn by his warm demeanor and the way his attention seemed to focus entirely on her whenever she approached. By dessert, she'd noticed the curious looks from the other guests at his table, particularly from a stunning woman in a red dress who seemed increasingly irritated by Jack's distraction. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Riley was collecting empty glasses when she felt someone approach from behind. "You have a beautiful smile," came Jack's voice, causing her to nearly drop another glass. She turned, finding him standing closer than she expected. "Thank you," she said, unsure how to respond to such a direct compliment from a client, especially one so important. "I hope this isn't inappropriate," he continued, "but I'd like to see you again. Outside of this." He gestured to the event around them. Riley blinked in surprise. don't think that would be appropriate, Mr. Sullivan." "Jack," he corrected again, his eyes searching hers. "And why not?" "Well, for one, I'm working right now," she said, trying to maintain her professionalism despite the flutter in her stomach. "And I'm just a guy who'd like to have coffee with you," he said, his voice dropping lower. "Nothing more complicated than that." Riley hesitated. He seemed sincere, but she'd learned the hard way that mixing business with pleasure rarely ended well. "I appreciate the offer, but I should decline." Disappointment flickered across his face before he nodded. "I understand, but in case you change your mind..." He produced a business card and placed it on her tray. "My personal number is on the back. Not my assistant's, not my office. Just me." Before Riley could respond, Tina appeared, her eyes widening at the sight of the CEO engaged in conversation with her server. "Mr. Sullivan, is everything to your satisfaction?" "Everything has been excellent," he assured her, his eyes still on Riley. "You have an exceptional team." "Thank you, sir. Riley, we need help in the kitchen," Tina said pointedly. With a nod, Riley excused herself, but not before catching Jack's final glance, one that held both question and promise. In the kitchen, she slipped his card into her pocket, telling herself she would never use it even as her fingers traced its embossed edges. 3 days later, Riley still hadn't called the number. She'd taken the card out countless times, staring at the handwritten digits on the back before putting it away again. It was madness to even consider it. He was Jack Sullivan, tech CEO with a net worth she couldn't even imagine, and she was a part-time server working her way through graduate school. Their worlds couldn't be more different. But his eyes, the way they'd looked at her with genuine interest rather than the dismissive glance most clients gave the staff, that had felt real. "You're being ridiculous," she muttered to herself as she hurried toward campus, late for her advanced marketing seminar. "It was just one night. He's probably already forgotten about you." The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves as Riley rushed across the university quad. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate, Zoe, reminding her about their bills due that weekend. Another reason to focus on reality rather than daydreaming about handsome CEOs. Her professor was already speaking when she slipped into the lecture hall, earning her a pointed look as she found a seat at the back. Today's topic was brand positioning in competitive markets, something that should have fascinated her, given her career aspirations in marketing. Instead, she found her thoughts drifting to Innovative Technologies and their charismatic leader. After class, Riley headed to her part-time job at the university library. The quiet work of reshelving books gave her too much time to think, and by the end of her shift, she'd made a decision. She would call him not because she expected anything to come of it, but because she needed to put this foolish fascination to rest. Outside the library, she pulled out the card and dialed before she could change her mind. It rang twice before he answered. Jack Sullivan. The sound of his voice nearly made her hang up. "Hi, this is Riley. Riley Green from the event the other night." There was a beat of silence, and for a terrible moment, she thought he'd forgotten her. Then, "Riley, I was beginning to think you wouldn't call." "I almost didn't," she admitted. "I'm glad you changed your mind. Are you free tomorrow for that coffee?" Riley hesitated. Her last class ended at 2. "I could meet at 3. 3 is perfect. There's a place called Brood Awakening on Michigan Avenue. Do you know it?" She did. It was an upscale cafe where a single cappuccino cost more than she usually spent on coffee for an entire week. "Yes, I can meet you there." "Great," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I'm looking forward to it." After they hung up, Riley stood motionless, wondering what she'd just agreed to. A coffee date with Jack Sullivan felt like stepping into someone else's life, someone who didn't have to count every dollar or work 3 jobs to make ends meet. The next day, Riley changed outfits 4 times before settling on a simple blue dress that Zoe insisted brought out her eyes. She arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early, her nerves making her punctual to a fault. To her surprise, Jack was already there, seated at a corner table away from the windows. He stood as she approached, and she was struck again by how tall he was, how his presence seemed to fill the space around him. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I said I would," Riley replied, taking the seat he pulled out for her. Up close, without the distraction of the event around them, she could appreciate how handsome he truly was. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd run his hands through it, and his blue-gray eyes were warmer than she remembered. "I have to admit," he said, "I wasn't sure if you would. You seemed quite determined to maintain professional boundaries the other night." Riley smiled despite herself. "I was working, and you were the client. And now? Now, I'm just curious why the CEO of Innovate Technologies would want to have coffee with a server from his party." Jack leaned back, his gaze direct. "Because in a room full of people trying to impress me, you were the only one who treated me like a person, not a position. That's refreshingly rare in my world." A waiter approached, and Jack ordered for both of them after checking Riley's preferences. She noted how he spoke to the server with the same respect he'd shown her another rarity among the wealthy clients she usually encountered. "So, Riley Green," Jack said once they were alone again, "tell me about yourself. When you're not rescuing CEOs from boring parties, what do you do?" "I'm a graduate student at Northwestern," she said. "Marketing and consumer behavior. The catering gig is just one of my part-time jobs to pay the bills." His eyebrows rose. "One of? How many jobs do you have?" "3 at the moment. I'm also a research assistant for one of my professors, and I work at the university library." Jack looked genuinely impressed. "That's a lot to juggle with graduate studies." Riley shrugged, suddenly self-conscious about the disparity in their circumstances. "It's not uncommon. Most of my classmates work multiple jobs, too." "What made you choose marketing?" As their coffee arrived, Riley found herself opening up about her passion for understanding consumer behavior, her undergraduate work in psychology, and her dreams of working for a company where she could make a real impact on product development and positioning. Jack listened attentively, asking insightful questions that showed he was genuinely interested. When he spoke about his own company, his enthusiasm was contagious, his eyes lighting up as he described the technologies they were developing and the problems they were trying to solve. "We're working on accessibility features that could revolutionize how people with disabilities interact with smart devices," he explained. "It's not the flashiest project we have, but it's the one I'm most passionate about." "That's amazing," Riley said, genuinely impressed. "My cousin has cerebral palsy, and the difference good technology makes in her daily life is incredible." "Exactly," Jack nodded eagerly. "Technology should be inclusive. That's been one of our core principles since I founded the company." Time slipped away as they talked, their coffee growing cold, as they discovered shared interests in old movies, hiking, and a mutual addiction to true crime podcasts. It was only when Riley glanced at her watch that she realized 2 hours had passed. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "I have a shift at the library in 30 minutes. Jack looked equally disappointed. "Can I see you again?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibilities that both excited and terrified Riley. Dating had never been her priority between work and school. She barely had time for herself, let alone someone else. And dating someone like Jack Sullivan came with complications she couldn't begin to imagine. But sitting across from him, seeing the hope in his eyes, she couldn't bring herself to say no. "I'd like that," she said finally. His smile was worth any complication that might come. "Are you free Saturday? I know a place that serves the best brunch in Chicago. Very low-key, I promise." Riley mentally reviewed her weekend schedule. "I have to work Saturday night, but I'm free until 4. "Perfect. I'll pick you up at 10, if you're comfortable sharing your address." She hesitated only briefly before giving him her apartment address, wondering what he would think of her modest building in a decidedly unglamorous neighborhood. As they left the cafe, Jack walked her to the bus stop, despite her insistence that it wasn't necessary. Standing there, with people rushing past them on Michigan Avenue, he seemed both part of the city and somehow separate from it, his presence commanding attention, even in casual clothes. "Thank you for today," he said, his hand lightly touching hers. "I haven't enjoyed a conversation that much in a very long time." The sincerity in his voice made her heart race. "Neither have I." For a moment, she thought he might kiss her, but instead, he squeezed her hand gently before stepping back. "I'll see you Saturday, Riley Green." As her bus arrived, Riley couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. Whatever this was, a brief connection between two very different worlds, or the beginning of something more, she was looking forward to discovering it. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. a perfect autumn day with just enough chill in the air to justify the new sweater Riley had splurged on after her last paycheck. She'd told herself it was a necessary purchase for the cooling weather, not specifically for her brunch with Jack, but the butterflies in her stomach as she put it on told a different story. At exactly 10 o'clock, her buzzer rang. When she opened the building's front door, she was surprised to find Jack standing there alone. No driver, no flashy car parked at the curb. "Good morning," he said, his smile warming his entire face. "You look beautiful." Riley felt herself blush. "Thank you. No fancy car today?" He shrugged, looking almost sheepish. "I thought we'd walk. The place is only about 15 minutes from here, and it's too nice a day to waste inside a car." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her. He'd made an effort to meet her on her terms, to step into her world rather than pulling her into his. As they walked through her neighborhood, Riley was struck by how at ease Jack seemed, despite the fact that he probably lived in a penthouse somewhere downtown. He asked about the local businesses they passed, genuinely interested in the community. "So, how does a tech CEO know about the best brunch place near my decidedly UN-fancy neighborhood?" Riley asked as they turned down a street she frequented. Jack laughed. "I wasn't always a CEO, you know. I grew up on the South Side. My dad was a mechanic. Mom worked at the hospital cafeteria. I know Chicago, beyond the Gold Coast, and Magnificent Mile." The revelation surprised her. "I didn't expect that." "Most people don't," he admitted. "It's easier to believe I was born into this life. The reality of climbing up from nothing isn't as glamorous as the end result." They arrived at a small corner restaurant with a hand-painted sign and a line stretching out the door. "Maggie's," Jack announced. "Family-owned for 3 generations. I used to come here when I was first starting out and could barely afford the coffee. I've walked past this place 100 times, but never gone in," Riley said, taking in the cheerful exterior. "Then you're in for a treat." To Riley's surprise, the hostess recognized Jack immediately, greeting him with a warm hug. "Jack Sullivan, it's been too long." "Sorry, Elena. The new headquarters has been all-consuming," he explained, returning the embrace. "Is your mom here today?" "In the kitchen. Where else? She'll want to see you." Elena turned her attention to Riley. "And who's this beautiful lady?" "This is Riley," Jack said, his hand finding the small of her back. "Riley, this is Elena. Her mother taught me everything I know about authentic Polish cuisine." Elena grinned. "Which isn't saying much, but he tries. Come on, I've got your usual table." As they followed Elena through the crowded restaurant, Riley noticed several other patrons greeting Jack by name. This wasn't just a place he knew about. It was a place where he belonged. Their table was in a cozy corner by a window overlooking a small garden. Before they could even open their menus, a formidable woman with silver-streaked dark hair emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Jack!" she exclaimed, pulling him into a fierce hug. "You disappear for months and then show up with no warning? And with such a pretty girl." Jack laughed, returning the embrace. "Maggie, this is Riley. Riley, this is Maggie Kowalski, the best chef in Chicago, and the woman who fed me when I was too broke to buy groceries." "It's a pleasure to meet you," Riley said, extending her hand, which Maggie ignored in favor of embracing her too. "Any friend of Jack's is family here," she declared. "Now sit. I'm bringing you my special today. No arguments." As Maggie bustled back to the kitchen, Riley turned to Jack with newfound curiosity. "So, you really did start from nothing?" He nodded, his expression growing more serious. "My parents died when I was 19, car accident. I was in my second year at UIC, scholarship kid with big dreams and no backup plan. I worked 3 jobs to stay in school, just like you're doing now." "I had no idea," Riley said softly. "Maggie let me wash dishes here in exchange for meals," he continued. "When I developed my first app in my dorm room, she was one of my earliest investors, put in $500, which was everything she had saved that month." "That's incredible," Riley said, seeing him in a completely new light. "What was the app?" "A simple study tool for college students. Nothing revolutionary, but it sold enough to let me hire a small team for my next project. That one caught the attention of some actual investors, and, well," he spread his hands. The rest built from there. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of steaming plates of food, pierogi, potato pancakes, and a mushroom stew that smelled divine. As they ate, Jack told Riley more about his journey from a struggling student to successful entrepreneur, his story far more relatable than she would have imagined. "I still can't quite believe you called me," he admitted, as they shared a slice of apple cake for dessert. "I thought I'd blown it by being too forward at the event." Riley smiled. "I almost didn't. I kept telling myself it was crazy to think someone like you would be genuinely interested in someone like me." "Someone like you?" Jack repeated, his brow furrowing. "You mean someone brilliant, hard-working, and beautiful who's accomplishing her dreams through sheer determination?" "Why wouldn't I be interested?" The sincerity in his voice made Riley's heart skip. "I meant someone whose idea of luxury is splurging on name-brand cereal instead of the generic kind." Jack laughed. "I lived on ramen for 2 years. Trust me, I get it." He reached across the table to take her hand. "The trappings of success are just that, trappings. They're not who I am." After brunch, they wandered through a nearby park, talking easily about everything and nothing. Jack told her about the pressure of running a company that employed thousands of people, and Riley shared her dreams of eventually launching her own marketing consultancy. "My thesis focuses on emotional connection in brand loyalty," she explained as they sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. "How companies can foster genuine relationships with consumers beyond just selling products. That's exactly what we're struggling with at Innovate right now," Jack said, his expression animated. "We create amazing technology, but we haven't quite cracked the emotional connection that makes people passionate about our brand, the way they are about some of our competitors." "It's about storytelling," Riley said without thinking. "Your personal journey is compelling the scholarship kid who worked his way up, who still cares about the community where he started. That's the kind of authentic narrative consumers connect with." Jack looked at her with new appreciation. "You should talk to our marketing team. Seriously, they've been wrestling with our new campaign for months." Riley laughed. "Right. I'm sure your CMO is dying to hear suggestions from a graduate student." "My CMO would be thrilled to hear fresh perspectives, especially ones as insightful as yours," Jack countered. "I mean it, Riley. You have a natural talent for this." Before she could respond, her phone alarm chimed, reminding her of her upcoming shift. "I have to go," she said reluctantly. "My library shift starts in an hour." Jack nodded, though disappointment was clear on his face. "Can I walk you home?" "I'd like that." As they strolled back toward her apartment, their hands found each other, fingers intertwining naturally. The simple contact sent warmth spreading through Riley's chest, a connection that felt both new and somehow familiar. At her building, Jack turned to face her, still holding her hand. "I'd like to see you again." "Soon." Riley knew she should be cautious, should protect her heart from hoping for too much. But looking up at him in the golden afternoon light, she couldn't find a reason to deny what she was feeling. "I'd like that too." This time, when he leaned down, she met him halfway. His kiss was gentle, questioning at first, then deepening as she responded. His hand came up to cup her cheek, and Riley felt herself melting into the moment, forgetting everything but the sensation of his lips on hers and the solid warmth of his presence. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Jack's eyes were dark with emotion. "I'll call you tonight?" Riley nodded, unable to trust her voice. With one more quick kiss, she forced herself to turn and enter her building, feeling his gaze follow her until the door closed behind her. Leaning against the inside wall, she touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the imprint of his kiss. Whatever she'd expected when she called him, it wasn't this connection that felt deeper and more real than any she'd experienced before. The rational part of her brain warned that falling for Jack Sullivan would be complicated at best, heartbreaking at worst. Their worlds were too different, their lives on separate trajectories. But as she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Riley couldn't bring herself to care about rational concerns. For now, she would allow herself to feel the joy of this unexpected connection, to explore whatever was developing between them without trying to predict its outcome. Jack called that evening as promised, and they talked for hours, as if making up for all the conversations they hadn't yet had. It became a nightly ritual over the following weeks. No matter how busy their days, they found time to connect, sharing details of their lives and discovering the many ways in which they complemented each other. Their second date was dinner at a hidden gem of a Thai restaurant that Riley loved. Their third was a Saturday morning at the Art Institute, where they discovered a shared appreciation for Impressionist paintings. By their fourth date, a concert by a local jazz band, they were finishing each other's sentences and communicating in glances that needed no words. Riley met Jack's small circle of trusted friends, not the business associates who surrounded him at events, but the people who knew the real Jack Sullivan. There was Miguel, his roommate from college who now ran Innovate's research department, Sarah, his no-nonsense lawyer who had been with him since the early days, and David, his childhood friend who still worked as a teacher on the South Side and treated Jack exactly the same as he had when they were kids. In turn, Jack integrated seamlessly into Riley's world, charming her roommate Zoe, engaging her study group in passionate discussions about consumer ethics, and even volunteering to help shelve books during one of her library shifts when they were understaffed. "You don't have to do this," Riley had protested as he followed her through the stacks, pushing a cart of books. "I'm sure you have more important things to do on a Tuesday night." Jack had simply smiled, placing a book on the shelf with exaggerated precision. "There's nowhere I'd rather be. Besides, now I can say I've experienced all three of your jobs. Next weekend, I'm thinking of joining your catering team." Tina would have a heart attack, Riley laughed, imagining her manager's face if Jack Sullivan showed up in server's attire. "Speaking of jobs," Jack said, his tone becoming more serious, "I mentioned you to our marketing team. They're impressed by your thesis concept and wondering if you'd be interested in an internship next semester." Riley stopped shelving, turning to face him. "Jack, you didn't have to do that." "I didn't do anything except mention your work," he insisted. "They looked up your publications themselves. This isn't about us, it's about your talent. The internship would be paid, flexible around your classes, and could count toward your graduate credits." The opportunity was tempting. Innovate Technologies was exactly the kind of forward-thinking company she'd dreamed of working for. But the complication of dating the CEO while trying to establish herself professionally gave her pause. "I don't know," she said slowly. "I don't want people thinking I got the position because of us." Jack set down the book he was holding, moving closer to her in the narrow aisle. "I understand that concern. That's why I made sure I'm not involved in the internship program at all. The marketing team reports to the CMO, who reports to the board, not directly to me. Your work would stand entirely on its own merits." Riley considered this. "Let me think about it." "Of course," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No pressure either way. I just didn't want to hold back an opportunity you might want because of our relationship." Our relationship. The words sent a thrill through her. Over the past month, they'd fallen into an easy rhythm together, but neither had put a label on what they were building. "Is that what this is?" she asked quietly. "A relationship?" Jack's expression softened. "It is for me. I'm not seeing anyone else, not interested in seeing anyone else. I'm all in here, Riley." The vulnerability in his voice touched her deeply. This powerful man, who commanded boardrooms and led a technological empire, was standing in a quiet library aisle, offering her his heart with the same straightforward honesty he'd shown from the beginning. "I'm all in too," she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. His kiss was tender, a promise of things to come, and Riley allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, their different worlds could merge into something beautiful. As autumn gave way to winter, their relationship deepened. Jack invited Riley to Innovate's holiday charity gala, where she was introduced to the company's leadership team, not as his date, but as a promising marketing talent. Several executives sought her insights on connecting with younger consumers, and by the end of the evening, she had accepted the internship offer, confident that she could balance her relationship with Jack while establishing her professional reputation. For Christmas, they escaped the city for a weekend at a cozy cabin in Wisconsin that Jack had owned for years. Surrounded by snow-covered pines and with no agenda beyond being together, they opened up about their deepest fears and highest hopes. The conversation flowing as naturally as the crackling fire that warmed the rustic living room. "I never thought I'd find someone who understands both sides of me," Jack confessed as they lay intertwined on the couch, watching snow fall gently outside. The ambitious businessman and the South Side kid who still feels like an imposter sometimes. Riley traced the line of his jaw with her fingers. That duality is what makes you who you are. You haven't lost touch with your roots, even while building something extraordinary. What about you? He asked, capturing her hand and kissing her palm. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Riley considered the question. Professionally, I'd love to be leading marketing strategy for a company that's making a positive impact. Maybe have my own consultancy on the side. She hesitated, then added softly, personally, I want what my parents have. They've been married 30 years and still look at each other like they're the only people in the room. Jack's eyes held hers, intense and sincere. I want that too, someone to build a life with, to grow with. I've achieved more than I ever dreamed professionally, but it doesn't mean much without someone to share it with. The weight of his words, the future they implied, hung between them, not frightening, but full of possibility. That night, their lovemaking held a new depth, a connection that transcended the physical and spoke of commitments not yet voiced, but increasingly certain. January brought new challenges. Riley began her internship at Innovate while continuing her graduate studies and her library job. Jack's company launched a major new product line, demanding long hours and frequent travel. They both struggled with the reduced time together, but made the most of the moments they could steal. It was during one of these precious evenings together, a simple dinner at Riley's apartment, that the first real test of their relationship emerged. Jack arrived later than planned, apologetic and clearly exhausted after a day of intense meetings. The board is pushing back on the accessibility project, he explained as Riley served the pasta she'd kept warm for him. They don't see the profit potential, only the development costs. Riley frowned. But that project is so important. You've talked about how it could help millions of people. I know, Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. But I'm getting resistance from investors who want faster returns. They're suggesting we shelve it and focus on our consumer electronics division. That's not the company you described to me, Riley said carefully. The Jack Sullivan I know wouldn't abandon a project just because it might not maximize profits. Jack looked up sharply. It's not that simple, Riley. I have responsibilities to shareholders, employees whose livelihoods depend on the company's success. I understand that, she interrupted gently. But you also have a responsibility to your own vision, to the values you founded the company on. If you compromise on this, what's next? His expression darkened. You don't understand the pressures I'm under. This is business. Maybe I don't understand all the business complexities, Riley conceded. But I do understand you, Jack. And this isn't you. They finished dinner in strained silence, the argument unresolved but simmering beneath the surface. When Jack left that night, their goodbye kiss was brief, both of them still holding on to their positions. The disagreement lingered between them over the next few days, creating a distance neither knew quite how to bridge. At work, Riley threw herself into her internship projects, impressing the marketing team with her innovative ideas. Jack buried himself in strategic planning, searching for a way to save his accessibility project without alienating the board. It was Zoe who finally pushed Riley to reach out. You two are being ridiculous, she said bluntly as they shared breakfast one morning. You had one argument, and you're acting like it's the end of the world. It's not about the argument itself, Riley tried to explain. It's about fundamental values. If Jack is willing to abandon projects he believes in because of financial pressure. Has he actually abandoned the project? Zoe interrupted. Well, no, not yet. Then maybe instead of assuming the worst, you should be supporting him while he figures it out, Zoe suggested. Relationships aren't about agreeing on everything. They're about working through the hard stuff together. The wisdom of her roommate's words struck Riley deeply. That evening, she called Jack, asking if they could meet. He suggested the small park near her apartment where they'd spent time on their first date. When she arrived, he was already waiting on their bench, 2 cups of hot chocolate in hand. The sight of him, his tall figure hunched slightly against the cold, his expression brightening as he spotted her, made her heart ache with tenderness. I'm sorry, they both said simultaneously as she sat beside him, then laughed, the tension between them beginning to dissolve. I shouldn't have implied you were compromising your values, Riley began. That wasn't fair. Jack shook his head. No, you were right to challenge me. After you said that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I founded Innovate to create technology that makes a difference. not just to make money. Have you figured out what to do about the project? She asked, accepting the hot chocolate he offered. A slow smile spread across his face. Actually, yes. I spent the last 3 days reworking the business model to demonstrate how the accessibility features could open up entirely new markets. I presented it to the board this morning, and they approved continued development. Jack, that's wonderful, Riley exclaimed, genuine pride filling her voice. I couldn't have done it without you, he said, taking her hand. You reminded me of what matters, of who I want to be as a leader. That's what I need in my life, someone who sees the best in me and challenges me to live up to it. Riley squeezed his hand, feeling the connection between them strengthen through the very challenge that might have weakened it. I'm sorry I wasn't more supportive while you figured it out. I should have trusted you more. And I should have explained better instead of getting defensive, Jack acknowledged. I'm not used to having someone care enough to call me out when I'm straying off course. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching their breath form clouds in the cold air. The distance between them closed by honest communication and mutual respect. Move in with me, Jack said suddenly. Riley turned to him in surprise. What? I know it's only been a few months, but I've never been more certain about anything, he continued, his eyes earnest. I love you, Riley Green. I want to build a life with you. The declaration took her breath away. Despite the depth of their connection, neither had spoken those 3 words until now. Jack, I love you too, she admitted, her heart racing. But moving in together is a big step. My apartment is so small and your place is... We could find a new place, he suggested eagerly. Something that's ours, not mine or yours. Somewhere in between our worlds. The thoughtfulness of the suggestion touched her. Once again, Jack was meeting her halfway, creating a path they could walk together. Can I think about it? She asked. Not because I'm unsure about us, but because I want to make sure we're doing this for the right reasons, not just because we miss each other when our schedules get crazy. Jack nodded, disappointment visible, but understanding prevailing. Of course, there's no rush. I just wanted you to know where I stand all in, remember? All in, she echoed, leaning forward to kiss him, sealing the promise between them. As winter melted into spring, Riley and Jack found their rhythm. Her internship at Innovate transitioned into a part-time position that accommodated her final semester of graduate school. Jack restructured his executive team to create more balance in his own life, delegating responsibilities that had previously kept him working around the clock. The question of moving in together remained open, a future step they both anticipated but didn't rush. Instead, they focused on deepening their understanding of each other, on building a foundation strong enough to weather any challenge. That foundation was tested again in April, when a prominent business magazine published a profile of Jack that mentioned his relationship with marketing intern Riley Green, implying she had advanced at Innovate because of their personal connection. Riley was devastated when a colleague showed her the article. She had worked so hard to establish herself on her own merits, to keep her relationship with Jack separate from her professional development. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she told Jack that evening, pacing his living room in distress. Now, everyone at Innovate will think I'm only there because I'm sleeping with the CEO. Jack's expression was thunderous. The magazine is printing a retraction. They never fact-check that you're actually in the marketing department, reporting to the CMO, not to me. And I've already spoken with HR about releasing a statement clarifying the reporting structure. A retraction doesn't undo the damage, Riley said, tears of frustration welling in her eyes. People remember the accusation, not the correction. Then we'll prove them wrong, Jack insisted, stopping her pacing by gently taking her shoulders. You'll continue doing exceptional work, and eventually your talent will speak for itself. Maybe I should look for a position elsewhere, Riley suggested reluctantly. Start fresh somewhere, my relationship with you isn't an issue. Is that what you want? Jack asked, his voice strained. To leave Innovate? Riley shook her head, tears finally spilling over. No, I love what I'm doing there. The team is brilliant, the projects are meaningful, but I can't bear having people whisper behind my back, questioning whether I've earned my place. Jack pulled her into his arms, holding her close as she cried. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But before you make any decisions, let's talk to Sarah, As our legal counsel, she might have some perspectives we haven't considered. The next day, they met with Sarah in her downtown office. The sharp-eyed lawyer listened to their concerns before offering her characteristic blunt assessment. The magazine piece was sloppy journalism, but it's also brought into the open something you two needed to address anyway, she said. Your relationship isn't a secret, nor should it be. The question is how to manage the professional implications transparently. What do you suggest? Jack asked. Riley reports to the marketing department, which reports to the CMO, who reports to the board, not to you directly, Sarah outlined. That's already a solid separation. I recommend we formalize it with a written conflict of interest management plan that explicitly removes Jack from any decisions regarding Riley's compensation, promotion, or project assignments. Riley considered this. Would that really help with perception? Though, perception is shaped by transparency and consistency, Sarah replied. If you're both open about your relationship while maintaining clear professional boundaries, people will eventually judge you by your work, not your personal life. The solution wasn't perfect, but it offered a path forward that didn't require Riley to abandon a job she loved, or Jack to choose between his company and their relationship. Over the following weeks, the formal management plan Sarah drafted was implemented, and Jack made a point of publicly acknowledging the importance of maintaining professional boundaries. Riley threw herself into her work, delivering results that even the most skeptical colleagues couldn't dismiss. Gradually, the whispers faded. Riley's innovative campaign for Innovate's accessibility features earned recognition from industry publications, establishing her reputation on her own merit. By the time she completed her master's degree in May, she had received 3 job offers from other companies, validation that her skills were valued beyond her connection to Jack. I'm so proud of you, Jack told her the night of her graduation, as they celebrated at the rooftop restaurant where they'd had their first dinner date. You've accomplished so much this year, all on your own terms. Riley smiled, feeling a new confidence in both her professional identity and their relationship. We've both grown, I think, learning how to navigate our different worlds without compromising who we are. Jack reached across the table to take her hand, his expression suddenly serious. Speaking of navigating our worlds, I've been thinking about what you said, about finding a place that's ours, not just mine or yours. Riley's heart quickened. Oh? I found a brownstone in Lakeview, he said, his eyes watching her reaction carefully. It's not downtown, not in my world, not quite your current neighborhood either, but somewhere in between. 3 bedrooms, a small garden in back. Room to grow, but not ostentatious. Jack, Riley breathed, the image he was painting taking shape in her mind. I haven't made an offer, he clarified quickly. I wanted us to see it together, to decide together, if you're ready. The question behind his words was clear. After 8 months together, navigating personal and professional challenges, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses, were they ready to take this next step? Looking into his eyes, Riley found her answer without hesitation. I'm ready. Let's go see it tomorrow. The brownstone was everything Jack had described, warm, welcoming, with character and charm that new luxury buildings couldn't replicate. As they wandered through the rooms, Riley could envision their life unfolding there. Quiet mornings in the sunny kitchen, evenings by the fireplace, the small 3rd bedroom eventually becoming. What do you think? Jack asked as they stood in the master bedroom, watching afternoon light stream through tall windows. It's perfect, Riley said simply. It feels like us. They made an offer that day, and by June, they were moving in, merging their lives in the physical space that represented the middle ground they'd created between their worlds. The housewarming party brought together both sides of their lives, Riley's graduate school friends and her colleagues from the library mingling with Jack's executive team and his childhood friends from the South Side. Seeing Miguel deep in conversation with Zoe, or Maggie from the Polish restaurant, exchanging recipes with Jack's head of product development, Riley felt a profound sense of rightness, of worlds successfully bridged. Late that night, after the last guests had departed, Riley and Jack stood in their new kitchen, surrounded by the cheerful aftermath of celebration. Happy? Jack asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Completely, she answered, leaning back against his chest. Though I think Maggie is convinced we need to have a baby immediately to fill all this space. Jack laughed, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her back. No rush, we have time for everything we want. Riley turned in his arms to face him. And what do you want, Jack Sullivan? His expression grew serious, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that still made her breath catch. I want a lifetime with you. I want to build something that lasts beyond business success or professional achievements. I want to grow old with you, watching you smile across a room and feeling the same way I did that first night when you served drinks at my event. You never told me, Riley said softly. When did you know? That night, what made you notice me? Jack smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face with gentle fingers. It was your smile, not the professional one you gave the other guests, but the real one when you thought no one was watching. You were arranging glasses at the bar, and you smiled at something the bartender said. It transformed your whole face, lit up your eyes. I couldn't look away. So the CEO really was falling for my smile, Riley teased, referencing how they'd begun. Falling then, still falling now, Jack confirmed, reaching into his pocket. Which is why I was hoping you might consider making it official. Riley's heart stopped as he withdrew a small velvet box. Jack, she whispered, emotions overwhelming her. He opened the box to reveal a ring that perfectly captured their relationship. Not ostentatiously large, but exquisitely designed, with a center diamond surrounded by smaller stones in a vintage-inspired setting. Riley Green, Jack said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. You've taught me that true success isn't measured in achievements or acquisitions, but in the connections we make and the love we share. Will you marry me? Will you keep building this life between our worlds? Tears of joy blurred Riley's vision as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Yes, she finally managed. Yes, I'll marry you. As Jack slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into a kiss that promised a lifetime of commitment, Riley marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From a dropped champagne flute at an exclusive event to this moment of perfect certainty, they had navigated the complexities of their different starting points to create something unique and precious, a love built on mutual respect, shared values, and the willingness to meet each other halfway. 1 year later, Riley stood in a small antechamber of the Chicago Botanic Garden, her father waiting to walk her down the aisle. Through the window, she could see the gathered guests, a perfect blend of their two worlds, just like their life together had become. "Ready, sweetheart?" her father asked, offering his arm. Riley smiled, thinking of Jack waiting for her beneath the flower-covered arbor. More than ready. As the music began and the doors opened, Riley stepped forward toward her future, toward the man who had fallen for her smile and had given her every reason to keep smiling ever since. Jack's face when he saw her was everything she could have hoped for: wonder, joy, and love, so powerful it seemed to radiate from him. As she reached him and their hands joined, Riley knew with absolute certainty that some loves truly could bridge any difference, creating something stronger and more beautiful than either person could have imagined alone. "Hi," she whispered, her heart full. "Hi," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're here?" "Always," Riley promised, as they turned together to begin their life as one.